Out of all the racetracks that I've had the pleasure of riding a motorcycle on, Circuit of the Americas was the most surreal experience I've ever had, for a number of reasons. I'm gonna tell you guys all about my experience. Let's go. So it's already pretty widely known that Circuit of the Americas is one of the most technical racetracks out there. It's considered a premier racetrack, and one of the things that is stressed from the very beginning of a track day at Circuit of the Americas is that you need to understand that COTA is an F1 track, right? First and foremost, above all other motorsports, COTA was built for F1 cars. Now, that being said, another thing that is further stressed by riding organizations is that there is not necessarily a defined motorcycle line anywhere at any turn on that racetrack. And that aspect of a track day at COTA is what is most intriguing to me. And the reason being is because during the day, from session to session, there's no discussion about what you can necessarily do better on the line. A lot of riders seem to find different lines that better suit them, just depending on which turn it is. And I found myself taking my coach's advice for a couple of turns. For example, turn 15. Now, turn 15 is the series of S turns after the back straight, right? And it is this weird double apex kind of thing that you essentially have to park the motorcycle to enter the turn. There's probably 4 or 5 different lines you could possibly take to negotiate turn 15. And I took my riding coach's advice and approached it in a manner of a straight line, which is hard to really explain. If you look at a map of that track, or just look at it on Google Earth, you can maybe understand. But there's like this little bit of an apex that then approaches where you got to park it, right? It's like this dog leg of a turn in another turn itself. It's hard to explain, but after you negotiate the first apex, if you just carry yourself through on a straight line and then just tip the bike in, it works for you mostly every time. A lot of guys were struggling with turn 15, and using that methodology of taking a straight line approach to it, I found myself being able to negotiate it pretty successfully, and I really didn't have a lot of trouble with turn 15. One of the reasons why COTA is such a technical track is because there's so dang many turns, right? So it's a 20 turn track, and it doesn't let you rest, man. It's constant, it's exhausting. It really makes it a lot of fun. You know, you run after turn 1, right at the very beginning, you start getting into the chicanes, and it just doesn't stop, man. It's constant flicking of the bike back and forth, and it's by no means reminiscent of an oval design whatsoever, you know what I mean? In fact, it's so technical in that respect, as far as it being exhausting, that the only practical chance you have of resting, if you would call it that, is on the back straight when you're doing a $150 or $160. And by the way, I reached right at 160 miles an hour repeatedly throughout the day on that back straight. And so all the technicalities involved with all the turns and S-turns, chicanes, blah, 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 when you get to the back straight, you can actually loosen up. Even though you're carrying incredible speed, it's your chance to just tuck and loosen all your muscles and just ride that thing out, man. Ride that straight line all the way out at that incredible speed, and you can relax. It's the most ironic thing ever. And when I was told that's how it was going to be, I was like, dude, no way. How do you figure you're going to relax hitting 150, 160 miles an hour on a back straight? But sure enough, I found myself just loosening up on the bars and everything, and being able to kind of catch my breath, if you will, before having to shut her down like buck 50 to 25 miles an hour and about 1,000 feet or so. I don't know how many feet it is. It's probably 1,000 to 2,000 feet, if that much, you know. Now, of course, the craziest part is the surrealness of it all, right? It's Circuit of the Americas, man. You know, that was my first time on COTA, and coming from a guy who had only seen that track from the stands at MotoGP and Moto America races, to actually be on that track and take all that in, and, you know, going through turns with these huge grandstands zipping by, you know, they were empty, of course, but it was such an experience, you know. It's kind of hard to explain, other than it makes it feel like a racer, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like a track day. It feels like you're there to compete, and it just makes it that much more exciting. I really enjoyed it. It was probably one of the best, if not the best, track day I've ever had. Now, from an organizational perspective, it kind of goes back to everything I was saying about how there's no real defined lines for motorcycles on that track. And so with that being said, the dynamic of a track day at COTA is just different. Now, in between sessions, of course, you have chats with your riding coach where they just ask you, you know, how do you feel? You know, what was that like? What do you feel like you need to work on? And then he'll give his advice accordingly. But as far as like formalized classroom sessions in between riding sessions, it's not like that, man. That doesn't exist. And it was refreshing. I will tell you, it was refreshing. The idea that, you know, instead of having to rush to a classroom and get a sticker proving that you were there, you know, it was the exact opposite. If you chose to just sit down in the chair in the paddock and cool off and take it all in, think about what your next session is going to have to be like for you to improve, you know, it's such a different experience, a less rushed experience. It was stellar. It was just fantastic. I really appreciated that a track day at COTA is like that. I didn't know what to expect, you know, so it was really a breath of fresh air, so to speak, getting to experience that kind of a track day. Now, you know, being able to haul butt on the back straight faster than I've ever been before on a motorcycle on a 1,000cc bike is one thing. Being fast at Circuit of the Americas is another. And I'll tell you, I wasn't very fast, you know. In fact, my best lap times were still over 3 minutes. But I can tell you that, as expected at a track day, from session 1 to the last session of the day, obviously you improve in all sectors of the racetrack. And now I'll say this, I'm not really one to ever toot my own horn, but I will in this case. By the end of session 3, my riding coach, you know, he called us all over there, the whole group, for a little powwow, you know, just check on what we felt like our progress was since we were 3 sessions in. And I kid you not, for the first time ever, a coach complimented me. So he was chasing me, critiquing me. I didn't know he was back there. You know, you never look back. And he says, "Man, you're on rails." And I was like, "Yeah?" He said, yeah, you are on rails out there, dude. You're cooking." And it really made me feel good, man. It made me feel like I'm a good track rider, you know, all things considered. I don't know. It was an unexpected and welcome compliment, is all I can say about it. You know, and the other thing about it, especially on a track like that, when you're pushing yourself and your capabilities to the limit, right, safely, what you feel like is your safe limit, where you're not putting yourself at risk of crashing because you're being a little bit too overzealous on the bike, you feel fast, you know what I mean? Like, by the 4th session, I had that confidence boost because he told me that, you know, I was performing well. That really is a mental aspect, you know. that plays into your success at a track day. And I felt like I was moving out, dude. I felt like I was fast. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Did you improve throughout the day? Do you feel like you got faster? Because that's the goal, is perfecting your craft. And it's like that at every racetrack. It's you know, it's dependent on which track you're on. And it doesn't really matter what track you're on. The goal is always the same. To get faster that day on that track and kind of perfect and master those turns as well as you can, safely. And I feel like I did that day. It was a great experience, and I honestly cannot wait to go back. Something about Circuit of the Americas, man. It's just different. In every way, different from every racetrack I've ever been on. And that's the 5th racetrack I've been on, by the way. Now, one of the last things I want to touch on is the surface of the track. You know, it's widely known and so controversial at Circuit of the Americas that the soil underneath the racetrack is constantly moving just because of the type of soil it is relative to the region on which it's built on, right? And there's been a lot of patchwork. There's been a lot of complaints from professional riders. You know, MotoGP riders complain about Circuit of the Americas all the time. But I'll tell you this, I didn't experience any of that to the effect where people have complained so much about it. Granted, my suspension is tuned personally for me, but the only real anomaly that I felt consistently was at turn 1. When you hug the candy stripe on turn 1 on tip end, there's a very defined depression in the track that I felt every single time, because I would follow the same line right up on the candy stripe every time, and it was always there. But yeah, other than that, man, the back straight was smooth as butter. Really no complaints about the track surface. I have been on much worse racetrack surfaces than Circuit of the Americas. Case in point, MSRH, for example, you know, where there's random concrete patches here and there. But, you know, neither here nor there. But anyways, that really about sums up everything I wanted to talk about concerning my experience at Circuit of the Americas. If you have been at Circuit of the Americas, I'm curious about your opinion, your experience. What was it like for you? Drop a comment down below. Let me know how that was for you. But, as always, this has been me, and that's been you. It's Half Click Up. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Goodbye.